Hello, David Clark here from DVC Training, and today I'm going to do a video about a thing called Pinokio. Nothing to do with puppets or people's noses getting bigger. It's a front end that lets you use a lot of free AI stuff. Now, in particular, I'm going to look at a couple of things that I've used, which are a way of upscaling using AI, and also a thing that lets you change people's faces and colorize video. Now, the thing about these is they're all free. So it's letting you use this free stuff. Because it's free, it's not necessarily as straightforward as using something like Topaz. And there's a lot of different things that you can get into. And I haven't tried half of it because there's so much of it. Now, with the upscaling that I've used in here, actually does a very, very good job, especially for free. I think Topaz overall does a better job. This, for free, is getting fairly close. And there are caveats and problems, and I'll talk about that when I actually go through it. First off, let's look at actually getting hold of Pinokio. So the obvious thing is you go to the interweb, find the Pinokio website, and just download the installer for the operating system that you're using. Obviously, I'm using Windows. I do occasionally dabble with Linux, so I might try that one sometime. But choose the one you want and run the installer. It actually installs the Pinokio interface pretty quickly, and then you'll end up here with a little shortcut on your desktop saying Pinokio. End up running it, and then you'll get into the program itself. And as it is, you can't do anything without installing any modules. Now, what I want to do is I want to install a thing called Flash VSR, which is an AI upscaling thing. Now, like all this AI stuff, it's going to need a really good graphics card to work. So if you're running on a graphics card that's 5 or 6 years old, maybe only has about 4 or 5 gig of RAM, don't bother. This kind of stuff needs a decent up-to-date graphics card. Now, in this system, I've got an NVIDIA 5060 Ti with 16 gig of RAM. I'd say this is probably the minimum I'd want to use playing, especially with Flash VR, because you do get into limitations because I don't have enough memory on the graphics card. It would work better if you had something with 24 gig of memory or even more. That you're only going to get with reasonably up-to-date cards. Also, they use bits of the graphics card which were only invented in sort of the 30s, 40s and 50s series graphics cards. So anything before that, just don't bother. And on a laptop, it would work if you've got a decent graphics card in there, but it's really going to hammer it and it's going to make a lot of noise. Now, to install it, first of all, I've got to find it. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing it. For Flash VR, the simplest thing is to come here to Community, click in the search box and type Flash VSR. And you'll come up with a list of options and it'll probably be here at the top as it says. Click on Install and let it install. It's as simple as that. Now, it will take a little bit of time and it will take a little bit of space. Another thing I found when I started using quite a few of these different sort of AI things is that everything wants to go onto the C drive and it starts to eat up your space quite quickly. So ideally, have a nice big C drive. On my particular system, I had a 250 gig in there, which was what was in this system when it was first installed. And I changed it to a 1 terabyte drive because I was running out of space on the 250. There will be ways with extra fiddling that you can get stuff to go to other drives if you want to, but actually it involves quite a bit of fiddling. So I find it simpler just to let it do what it wants and just have more space on the C drive for it to work in. Then you let it install. It'll ask you several questions along the way. So you just carry on, saying yes basically to everything. And eventually it'll finish installing and you'll come up with this interface. Now, the interfaces for all the different things that you can do in Pinokio, they're all different because they're all based on whatever the particular program is. This is the one for Flash VR. And you can see it's got video upscaling and it's got image upscaling, and then there's a toolbox to do stuff. I've not really done anything with that. The main thing I've been fiddling with has been video, because I'm a video guy. I do a lot more of that than images. Now, when it comes to video, you've got a choice of doing a single video or a batch video. I'm just going to go for a single one. And the first thing you've got to do is to stick a file in here. So I'm just going to click on it and find the file that I want. And I'm going to use one of these bits of video here, which I've used several times for upscaling. This is originally DV footage, and I find it's better with this to make the files smaller. What it's going to do is take whatever this file is and then copy it into its temporary directory, which is on the programs drive, and then it's going to do stuff with it. And I just seem to find that if I used AVI files or big uncompressed files, it took a lot longer than just using an MP4. So I convert everything to an MP4. This video also is interlaced and I've deinterlaced it. So literally I created a deinterlaced MP4, which is standard definition size. And I'm just going to click on that and it loads it up into the window here. Which, if you've watched any of my upscaling videos, yeah, this is one I've done before, which I'm deliberately choosing just so we can compare that to the results I've had in other programs. But I'll give you some other examples as well. Essentially what I do is load up the file, and I either just say get on with it by start processing, or I come down here and I tick this thing, process as chunks. The way this works, it'll take that entire video, load it up onto the graphics card, and then start chopping it up into bits and processing it. The trouble is, the longer the video, the more memory it's going to take up. And if it runs out of memory, it will go wrong. It doesn't crash, it just comes up with an error. 12 seconds, probably won't get away with on my graphics card. I could probably get away with 5 or 6 seconds. If I'm going to do 12 seconds, it's going to go wrong. So I would generally come down here, tick process as chunks, which will automatically split it up into 5-second chunks. You can change the amount here. So you could experiment to see what your video card can cope with, but I've left it at the defaults because that works the rest of the time. And then I would click Start Processing. And then it goes off and starts chopping it up into chunks and starts processing it. Like it says here, the first time it might do a little bit of downloading of some models, but then it'll actually get on and do it. I mean, this takes time. Like all the AI stuff I've got, it takes a lot of time to do stuff. It's not nearly as bad as Topaz and Starlight, which is my third way of doing stuff, which takes 2 or 3 times longer, but it's actually longer than other Topaz models like Iris and so on. But I do think it comes up with pretty good results. Not perfect results, but pretty good results. Now I'm going to have to let that process and see what happens. As it's processing, you will have a readout down here telling you what's going wrong. So if it does go wrong, it comes up with an error here. What you could do is set it going and then look at how much of this memory it actually uses up. Like I said, I've got 16 gig of memory. So it's going to start using that memory up as it starts doing the processing. And if you notice this goes to 100% and then it starts using some of your ordinary RAM and slows down to an absolute crawl, you'll know that you haven't got enough memory to process what you're doing. So what you're going to have to do is come down maybe and change the size of your chunks, or this thing here, which I'll explain in a minute, your tile size. So we'll let that process and then we'll have a quick look at it once it's finished. Here's the shot I've done many times before. This is the deinterlaced version from the original DV. This is the Flash VR. Now I think you'll agree it has done a remarkably good job of including lots of extra detail that isn't there in the first place. There are times, if you look at this guy's eyes over here, that you might say that's a little bit weird. But I'm thinking I'm having to look pretty closely to find weird stuff. Overall, that to me is an awful lot better than that. Next up, I've got a clip which was originally DV. So this was something we did for one of our old demonstration tapes. And as you can see, once again, it's done a really good job of taking that, which is the standard definition stuff, deinterlaced, and turning it into this. Now you look too closely at some of the letters up here on top of the screen. Yeah, they're not right. That's something typically AI does mess up, is blurred letters it replaces with sharp gibberish. It's not perfect, but on the other hand, I would much rather look at this picture than that one. And again, it's done a very good job, I think, of cleaning it up and making it look good. I do think Flash VR is actually particularly good at faces more than anything else, although it's done a pretty good job around here as well. Next up, there's this shot. This shot is originally 8mm, so it's actually quite fuzzy original standard definition stuff, which was filmed in the early 90s. And yes, you can see the original over here is very fuzzy. It's got a halo around the edge, not very much definition. This is obviously better, but not perfect. The thing I don't like is how these trees come out. Like when we get to far away there, that is to me looking pretty not so sure about it. It's definitely not looking like a real countryside hill in Sussex in England. It's looking sharper than that, but it's not looking perfect. And the face is a bit odd. Again, if you look at it very closely, I don't know what's going on with this guy over here. And me, I look a bit weird now, but then when I get closer to the camera, suddenly it is looking an awful lot better. You'll also notice there's more definition on these things, and a lot of the noise that you get, there's a lot of noise in here as well from this original stuff, has gone away. So it's not perfect, but it is definitely better. Now I come to this shot, same kind of thing. And again, this is actually filmed at the same time. Again, early 90s. There's the Sussex Hills here, a tree. Yeah, basically standard shot. Some of this is coming out very well, some of this isn't. Now, of course, a big question with this is how does this compare to what other things can do? So I'll have a look at a comparison later on. But yeah, I'm not so sure that's come out tremendously well. I mean, it's definitely sharper, maybe in a way it's a bit too sharp. Maybe that's some of the problem. You'll also notice there's a slight flicker every 5 seconds, which I'll be explaining in a minute. So less happy with that one. I was much happier with this one, which was high 8 originally, and this one, which was DV. Again, it is definitely better, but there's things about it I don't like. Come over to this one. This one is a very, very long time ago. So you might notice I happen to be in New York and there are some twin towers in the background. So this was the very first stuff I ever filmed. I was using a VHS-C camera that was blooming heavy and quite big. And so very fuzzy original, lots of ghosting around the edge. Look at the ghosting around there. And it's sharper, but still quite a bit of ghosting. I think this one's better than that one. It's not perfect. Then we get on to this one. Now again, this one's high 8. Obviously, I'm using old-fashioned rubbish footage with this because what's the point of using new, good-looking footage? The whole point is you're trying to improve something and make it look better. If you look very closely at my face, you're starting with a very, very fuzzy... I haven't even got an eyelid there. It's put an eyelid in. But if you look too closely, it doesn't hold up. That just basically looks sharper than that. I've tried doing things that we filmed in at this quarry before, and sometimes you end up with all sorts of very weird-looking things and all the sound that it does. You might see where it goes wrong slightly, and that's on fast movement, especially some of the bits at the start here where the camera's juggling around. You might notice an odd bit of dropout here and there, like that disturbance in the picture, this horizontal disturbance. That's good old-fashioned tape dropout, which it hasn't got rid of. But it has made things look a lot sharper. And you'll notice the time difference between that and the previous shot is I've got a lot fatter. And the final one to look at is this one. And this is the squirrel, which actually was shot on a Pixel phone. So that's the original one. So it's a 1280-720 Pixel phone shot. And that's what Flash VR has done to it. It's seriously improved it above that. Now you look at those and you analyze those to death and you say, well, there's this bit wrong here and this bit's wrong there. As you'll see when I get round to comparing it to other ways of upscaling later on, actually a lot of the results I'm getting here are better than I get with other tools. It does depend on a bit on the footage. I think it's particularly good at reasonable source footage. This was a decent bit of high 8. This one here is a decent bit of DV. These ones here are 8mm. And also I don't think every IA thing I fiddle with really does have a problem with trees and grass. Never got anything there which, to me, looks like proper trees. There's always a bit too much of this kind of, yeah, it's made up some very, very thin twigs, but not in a necessarily realistic way. When I start comparing this to using Topaz later on, you'll see that, in fact, it's done a very good job compared to the programs that you actually have to pay for. Truth be told, this is way better upscaling than I could have done a couple of years ago on anything. So I was really impressed with it. For free and for quite easy to set up. I mean, there are lots of other ones around. There's a thing called Unifab I really want to try out and I haven't got around to trying. At the moment, I still think that Topaz does the best all-round job. But again, you have to pay for it. This is free. I've got another free thing, which I use through an interface called Comfy UI, and it's called Seed VR. It was recommended. That also does a very good job. But what I found about that, it is a bit of a pig to set up and get it working. So I might do another video on that sometime, but I did think it was a struggle for me to get Comfy UI and Seed VR2 working. Whereas Pinokio and this is actually pretty easy, as you saw in my setup video. I think the downsides of it are sometimes it's a little bit too sharp. Maybe that's a problem here, that this is just a little bit over sharp. So maybe I should just take some kind of blur to put, obviously you've got different types of blurs and different types of programs. Now in Edius here, I might just put a slight amount of blur on it. And it's lost some of the definition that it had. But on the other hand, these twigs and everything else in the background are not looking nearly as weird. And it's still looking way better than the original. So yeah, I can actually fuzz it up a little bit to make it maybe look slightly better. I think that to me looks better than the over sharpness. But I do like the sharpness. I like the sharpness that I get in something like this shot. So I've been very impressed with the results. Is it perfect? No. Is it very good for free? Yes, definitely. In my second video about Flash VR, I'll be looking a bit more in depth into those settings and also giving you a comparison between the results of Flash VR and Topaz. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and set up notifications so you don't miss when that video comes out. In the meantime, hope you found that useful. Don't forget to visit the website www.dvctraining.co.uk for more information, and I'll see you in the next video.